Justin Howard. I'm in a group with Ken, Daniel, and Kaylee, and we will be analyzing skipping through a component approach. The purpose of skipping is locomotion. Skip is used for traveling place to place, and it can be achieved through a step followed by a hop on one foot before switching to the opposite foot. To perform a skip, you want to go up, then make contact with the ground before passing to the other foot, and then to finalize it, you want to make sure you do the kickoff at the end of it. And here's a video analyzing skipping.
Ready?
Okay, one more time. Oh, that's I don't know. That's.
I'm ready.
Ready? Okay, now whenever you're ready.
Skipping is important because it can be used by athletes in training, like in boxing if you're shadow boxing or defending yourself from an opponent. Also within basketball, trying to perform a layup or a moving jump shot. Skipping can also be used for training when trying to build explosion within the lower body, and we will be going more into that when we study the component approach. Skipping is performed through three phases. Phase 1, a one-footed skip. The lower body allows one foot to complete a step and hop before the weight is then transferred. The other foot just steps. Hip is extended and the opposite knee is extended also, with enough force for the whole body to be lifted up off the ground. The upper body, it uses a bilateral assist of arms. The same shoulder is flexed with the elbow flexed at a 90-degree angle, and the opposite shoulder is extended with the elbow slightly flexed. For phase 2, it's a two-footed skip with a flat-footed landing. Each foot completes a step and a hop before the weight is transferred to the other foot. The heel touches the ground before the weight is transferred. The body then returns to the ground. The roles of each limb are then switched. For phase 3, it's also a two-footed skip, but ends in a ball of foot landing. Each foot completes a step and a hop before the weight is transferred to the other foot. Landing from the hop is on the ball of the foot and the heel does not touch the ground before the weight is transferred. The body then returns to the ground and the roles of each limb are switched. All of these actions are done in unison and in rhythm. We now will go into the component approach.
Is an approach that focuses on the phases and stages of development. This approach focuses on development being a continuous process rather than one that stops or takes breaks. The development is related to age, but not reliant on it. It is possible for someone who is older to be a stage 1 skipper. As the body and learner mature, there will be more specific adjustments that are made in order to improve the skill. The ability to produce force becomes more prominent, motor functions are controlled a lot easier. Those are just some examples. This approach was created by Gregory Payne and Larry Isaacs. Our stage 1 skipper is an amateur. In our stage 1, there is a step hop pattern, but the movements are not performed with enough force to leave the ground, little or no effective use of the arms. Footwork is improper, arms and legs are not in the proper unison, an exaggerated step or leap is present during the transfer of weight from one supporting limb to another. and total actions appear segmented. So if we're referring to Bernstein's, they appear almost frozen. And here's an example in real time.
Ready?
Okay, one more time. Oh, that's I had to. I don't know.
That's our stage 1 example. In our stage 1 example, our subject has off footwork, frozen isolated movements, and not enough force to get off the ground. Stage 2, our progressing skipper. In this stage, enough force is produced to get off the ground, also along with proper footwork being established. So in the video later, it will show that. Rhythmical transfer of weight during the step phase. So there is proper footwork in there. However, arms are still not used in unison with legs, and the exaggeration of vertical component during airborne phase, the hop, meaning we have enough force to get off the ground and it is prominent. And here's an example of our stage 2 skipper. In our stage 2 skipper example, there was proper footwork, there was proper unison of the feet at least, and the arms were slightly there, but not nearly as much as we'd like to. Step 3, our master skipper. Enough force is enough to get off the ground. Proper footwork is established. The rhythm is there. Arms are swinging in unison with both legs. And the foot of the supporting limb is carried near the surface during the hopping phase. Again, our example.
Different age groups that we analyzed and classified them into the stage of learning which they are in for the skip. So for the age 6 participant, we classified her as stage 3 because she performed the correct footwork and used her arms in unison with her legs. As you can see from the photos below, she drives her knee up and extends her shoulder to assist her in the jump phase of the movement. Next, we have the age 12 participant. So we classified her into the stage 2 because although she used correct footwork when performing the skip, she did not utilize her arms to jump and increase her momentum during the jump phase of the skip. And then next, we have the aged 18 participant. She performed correct footwork as well, but as you can see by the photos, she did not utilize her arms in the movement throughout the whole first 10 feet. And then next, we have the age 80 participant, who we classified in the stage 1 of learning because she performed a one-footed skip and had minimal arm movement that assisted her throughout the movement. So Bernstein's idea of coordination. So Bernstein mentioned freezing and freeing the degrees of freedom with respect to fundamental motor skills. So freezing, it's isolating body segments to reduce moving more parts, making the movement singular rather than sequential. Adolescents take on the role of releasing degrees of freedom so that the movement of skipping becomes an action. And then freeing is the releasing of joints to produce more fluid movements. Toddlers and elderly take on the role of freezing degrees of freedom. And so, with retrospect to our different age groups, we saw freezing in the age 80 participant who had a hesitation when jumping and would only do a single hop rather than and a single hop before switching to the other foot rather than a jump and then a hop with the opposing foot landing and then repeating. And then as far as freeing, our age 6 participant had fluid movement throughout the skip and was able to perform the best out of all 4 participants. And then we also saw freezing within the age 18 participant who froze the shoulder joint and saw no movement in the arms.
That explains how the environmental and the individual and the task all interact with one another is Newell's model of constraints. A constraint is something that limits or discourages certain movements and facilitates or encourages other movements. So you can think of a constraint as something that guides our motor behavior in a certain direction, meaning that some behaviors are encouraged and others are discouraged. That really helps shape the path that we take. So coming back to our chart here, we have task constraints, which are restricted to what the task is that we have to do, as well as the goals, rules, and equipment that we use in order to perform the task. We have environmental constraints, which have to do with external forces. And there are individual constraints that can be broken down into structural and functional constraints. Structural embody the anatomical and physiological aspects, while functional constraints embody the psychological and cognitive aspects. Some of the task constraints we found within our project was the goal to skip a total of 20 feet, as well as achieve maximum distance and height. Our equipment consisted of a tape measure, in which our participants had to stay within the measurement of 10 feet. Environmental constraints included external forces such as weather, external layouts such as the different types of grounds. Both individual structural and functional constraints were found within our project. Structural constraints include age, height, weight, and muscle mass, to name a few. Functional constraints included focus of attention and memory. As we mentioned earlier, there are 3 stages to skipping. In order to master the skill of skipping, there are some modifications or manipulations that need to occur. Within some of our participants, we found that they need to dorsiflex the foot more during the skip, especially during the up phase because it gives you more air time. Another modification we found was the extension of the shoulder to a higher degree because this allows for more swing and overall air time. Last, we found that the participant should slightly flex the knee as the body lands. This is because you don't want to land fully extended at the knee, so flexing the knees would help create flow and also potential injury at the knee. These modifications could help facilitate skill acquisition, and we put a picture of this on the right-hand side. It is an example of one of our participants doing all of these modifications. So this project involved an in-depth analysis of the fundamental motor skill skipping with a component approach. Participants included all ages across the lifespan, such as early childhood, adolescence, and older adulthood. So this is a chart of our findings. And surprisingly, the youngest participant, the 6-year-old, had the best results. This could be due to sociocultural reasons in her upbringing, or also, as we mentioned earlier, age is relevant, but it is not reliant. So we have the 6-year-old with the stages of development at 3, stage 3 being the highest, because she had the correct footwork and arms moved in unison with the legs. The 12-year-old showed a stage 2 with correct footwork, but arms weren't moving in unison with the legs. The 18-year-old showed also at a stage 2 with correct footwork and arms didn't move in unison with the legs. And for the 80-year-old, we found them at a stage 1 because it was not the correct footwork and arms didn't move in unison with legs also. So that concludes our presentation, and we hope you enjoyed our video. Thank you for listening.